So we turn our focus to the water crisis in South Africa. You would have seen quite a number of protests during the course of the week. And the chairperson of the water task team, the Deputy President Paul Mashatile, has met with stakeholders, including ministers, to assess the water supply challenges across Gauteng, following that outcry that we saw from residents about the ongoing water cuts. So during the State of the Nation address, you would have heard President Cyril Ramaphosa announcing that government will establish a national water crisis committee that will be chaired by him, and that committee would need to give feedback to the president. The Deputy President is expected to visit Johannesburg next week to monitor government's interventions in this water crisis here in Gauteng. Let's bring in now the Water and Sanitation Deputy Minister, David Mahlobo, who joins us via video link. Deputy Minister, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on SABC News. We do appreciate your time. First of all, let me start with, what the current situation is, in particular in areas that were so heavily affected by these water cuts.
No, thank you very much, Crisalda, and to a very good morning to the viewers on a Valentine's Day. The decisions we took, Crisalda, are starting to pay some kind of results. Certain parts, especially in Pretoria, after we did the load shifting, were able in certain parts to supply in the Pretoria West the water there, but the system is still very vulnerable. In the areas in Mabopane and Soshanguve, in the high-lying areas, they're not getting the water that they're supposed to. There was a big situation around Tsakane. You also look at the issues of Brakpan. And then last night, we were able to push the issues of water, the areas of Brakpan, and somewhere in between Johannesburg and the east, were handling those particular issues.
Yeah.
Then there was a movement of water that is happening now to Crown Gardens and other areas, but we're still struggling in areas like your Melville and others. And the teams, they've just given me the report this morning, but I'll be on the ground after 11 so that they can lead to support the teams.
Yeah. Deputy Minister, while we, of course, must, commend any movement that is being made to ensure that there is water coming out of these taps, do we have any indication at this stage when all of these affected areas will start having water running through their taps? Because for some of them, it's been a couple of weeks. They've been highly frustrated by the situation on the ground.
Crisalda, we just have to be open to citizens.
Yes.
The system is going to remain vulnerable. Our preoccupation now is to stabilize it. It's going to have faults because there are a number of challenges in the system. At least now we have some rain. When it is raining, the temperature comes down. The consumption will be a little bit lower. It will give us an advantage where they are trying to move the systems of rainwater and the Johannesburg and water city of Ekurhuleni, including SONA, just to stabilize and push the system to above 40%. This morning, some of them in Johannesburg, they're above 50%. I'm very happy. You go to Midrand, you go to Sanitation. Those are the areas that there's a lot of progress that is happening. But at the very same time, there are areas when we're trying to stabilize Johannesburg, certain parts of Mpumalanga, as I speak, that are depending. There's no pumping that is there. It's not going to be an easy solution, this thing of load reduction. In other words, the shifting of the water. There are fundamentals that, Crisalda, we must do. One of that, one that we have agreed with Johannesburg, they must deploy it as a matter of agency, short-term contractors to fix the leaks. If they are losing 10,000, they have 10,000 leaks that they are reporting per month. That is too much water that goes on the ground. The system is not going to be fixed there. But then now, if there's a reporting of a leak, it must be fixed faster. Like in Ekurhuleni, they've put teams, at Ekurhuleni, they've put teams. The second component, in the next month and two, additional reservoirs are going to be available in Johannesburg. And that's what the mayor and the contractors, I was there on the ground, I've seen that. In Tshwane, I'm happy that in the next 2 months, they will be delivering 2 additional water treatment works that will reduce the pressure on the rainwater system, giving us more than 100 million. Those are the things that Cristalda that will be able to give us. But to put your head on the block and say by this day, it will be irresponsible, because I know as a technical person how this system continues to have more breakages. In other words, you are driving the car on a highway and that car continues to be fixed on the highway. And citizens can only be guaranteed is that when the car stops, we must have the precision of fixing it quickly and we bring it back on the road and communicate with citizens.
Yeah. Deputy Minister, I'm sure you would agree with me here. We should not have gotten to this point. As a journalist on the ground myself, the discussions that we are having pertaining to leaks, the discussions that we are having pertaining to infrastructure maintenance are issues that we've been speaking about for years. I do understand that all of this takes money. It takes money to fix these. It takes faster approaches on the ground to identify where these leaks are, and for the people who are supposed to actually do the job, for them to go and do it, so that we avoid a situation where we have communities protesting over a lack of a basic service which I am entitled to as a citizen. It is my basic right to have water. Yet in instances where we're open the taps, there is simply no water coming up. How do we reconcile, Deputy Minister, with the fact that we are back at this particular area? And I respect the fact that you tell me you don't know when all these taps are going to have running water, but we should not be in this position. Somebody has to take accountability. It's unacceptable for these communities to be going through some hardship in this manner. I'm sure you would agree with me.
I fully agree, Crisalda, that we have to deal with issues of accountability. There was lack of leadership and issues that President acknowledged to say, over years, there was no adequate investment in infrastructure. We allowed the growth and the demand to happen. It has caught up with us. Now, on the question of leadership, Crisalda, President has made a big decision. He's going to be chairing the Water Crisis Committee. He has elevated this matter to a crisis level.
Yes.
Remember, last year, we made far-reaching decisions on the water turnaround plan. And I can tell you now, because that plan, scientifically, engineering-wise, is the best plan that we actually produce, both on water security and water supply reliability. But there's been an issue of discipline by those who are supposed to do what they're supposed to do at a local level, not doing it. Therefore, when President says, I've reached a stage that if you don't do your job, national government is not going to wait and be a spectator, we are going to intervene. In the meantime, while local government is fixing their capacity constraints, we'll have to be in a position to go ahead, get capable individuals, but organization. For an example, let's take an example of Johannesburg. Johannesburg, the mayor is trying, and I can tell you now, his initiatives are not going to give us sustainable results because he has to replace 12,000 kilometers of those pipes you are referring to. The only way you can do it now is just to bring in something like an entity, a private sector, or do a concession. You say to them, replace all these pipes. When you replace the pipes, I'm guaranteeing you water, come at your own risk. You do that. That's how you need to be decisive. In certain areas, our water boards, they do have the capacity and the balance sheet like rainwater. We can deploy them as a matter of agency, because if you don't do the pipe replacement, I studied water infrastructure. I know what it means. You can fix it today, tomorrow is bursting. It doesn't make sense. These pipes are old. They are more than 100 years old, and the technology at the time of asbestos doesn't help. That is actually going to have to be the medium term to long term, the pipe replacement. In the meantime, citizens, they need water. They're not going to wait. When the pipe bursts, the speed at which we are supposed to fix that in terms of the turnaround time, having teams in the morning, teams in the afternoon, is what we're doing now. That's what I'm overseeing. But if there's a power outage, like it does happen from time to time, affecting our pumping capability, let's put more reservoirs on the ground. And I'm happy that there's an investment that is being done by these municipalities, Ekurhuleni, Tegwin, and others. But that investment must be tripled to have more storage, that if there's a failure, you have a backup plan of more than 48 to 72 hours. If we can do those, we can reach what I can call it is a stabilization phase.
Indeed, Deputy Minister, and we also heard the President at the State of the Nation address speak about 56 municipalities, you know, that criminal charges have already been laid against for violating the Water Act. Could you elaborate on which some of these municipalities are? And when it comes to the municipalities, it is the residents that are complaining about the manner in which municipalities are not doing their jobs. A part of the crisis of where we're sitting now is due to municipalities that are simply not delivering on services that they're supposed to deliver. Money's meant to go to ensuring the refurbishment of some of this infrastructure that is problematic, that money being diverted to other things. That's part of the reason why we sit here. Talk to us, Minister, Deputy Minister, about these 56 municipalities. I think there are a little over 100 municipalities, if my memory serves me well. This could easily be charges laid against more than half of those municipalities, if my memory serves me well.
Remember, Crisalda, we do have 144 municipalities called water services authorities, 105 of them in terms of our own reports, because as a ministry we've done an oversight, we've done an assessment. Now in March we're going to produce another report whether there's an improvement. There are 105 that are not in good shape, but the 56 are the worst ones. And in the main, we have said, let's take action against them. Some of them, they're polluting the rivers, but there are systematic problems, because sometimes to bash municipalities is not going to help. But then there are certain things, like we're absolutely correct, we must hold them accountable about the decisions that they are not making. For an example, Crisalda, one of the decisions we have said to them, you can't have a situation where you sell water and electricity, you take the entire money from water and electricity, you put it in a sweeping account, you don't invest back on that particular asset so that you can sweat the asset and get a return on an asset. And I'm happy that SONA they've done, Ekurhuleni they've done. The mayor of Johannesburg, they said by the end of this month, on the money for the sales of water, it will be ring-fenced, they will bring it back to do that. In smaller municipalities, Crisalda, we've given them a lot of grants, and normally these grants are not spent, and they're supposed to go back to National Treasury. We've already intervened with our water boards. Instead of giving you a direct grant, we take that money ourselves as a national department from this year, we make it an indirect grant, and we deploy it capable implementing agent. While we are fixing your capacity, we say the citizens cannot be in a position to be waiting to do some of those things. The other matter we must fix is that when they appoint, our ministry is going to issue guidelines for the appointment of technical directors for infrastructure for water. We can't continue to have people who are just technicians who knows nothing about water infrastructure and asset management, which is a complex system, then being appointed by councillors and then getting them to manage our system, and they don't do so. But the attitude of CFOs in municipalities must understand that if water and electricity are not given the necessary resources as the main trading services, money gets sent everywhere. The issue of relationship of service delivery and revenue management and the funding, there must be that particular co-relationship. It's an example that has happened here in Gauteng, where development has happened. They've signed for development. They wake up the next day, they discover that there's no bulk infrastructure, no additional reservoirs, no pump station, and therefore we need to be chasing development. And infrastructure must be ahead of development.
I mean, some of these companies that are not doing work as they should be, Deputy Minister, I mean, it's as easy as blacklisting some of these companies. Those that are not doing the jobs and they're being given the money to do it, they should never be able to do business with government again. But anyway, let's move on to these municipalities. I did ask you about the municipalities, Deputy Minister. I mean, you spoke about these are some of the worst municipalities. Which are some of these municipalities? I think the public deserves to know which at least 5 of these worst municipalities. They're the ones that are, Deputy Minister, people are suffering. If it's my municipality that is not delivering, every time I would know, oh, my municipality is not delivering because it's amongst the worst. They're diverting money to elsewhere. I know you don't want to put them on blast.
I know there are certain municipalities at home, Sibaliba, we took them to court, they were fined more than 300 million. They don't even have that 300 million. You know what, Crisalda, we need to be able to tell the situation. We take them for failure, for infrastructure causing pollution. And then from there, when there's a failure, in terms of the law, we must be able to ensure that we take them to court. If there are plans, they can't implement it. They've done that, we go to court, they don't have the 300 million, and the court makes a decision that we are enforcing you that this turnaround plan, you take the 300 million rands that you don't even have, ring fence it, put it back to deal with that. We did with the Temalahleni. There are many of them that I don't have them here, where there have been a number of service delivery infrastructure failure impacting on the water resources in the Northern Cape, Western Cape, here also in the Free State and some in KwaZulu-Natal. But my team can be able to give it to you. But the reality, as I tell you now, we've reached a stage that in the meantime, when municipalities are struggling, we must deploy either implementing agents or delivery mechanism. I don't care whether it's a private sector company, whether it's another municipality. Councils must sit as a matter of agents, appoint those credible organizations at a risk. Then they are able to do that. They give them a contract that is reasonable, that if they put their own investment, they will be in a position to recover that.
Sorry to interject, Deputy Minister, but sometimes, in some instances, it's not credible institutions that are being brought in to help. This is another way to, for lack of a better word, it's another way to loot. It's another way to get your hand in the cookie jar. These are not credible in some instances. I'm not saying all. In some instances, companies are brought in that simply don't even know how to do the job. Now you're sitting, this is not it's not your forte, Deputy Minister, to go and be opening taps here in Melville, in Auckland Park. You are now forced to do that because of the incompetence of individuals who are simply not being held to account. Then we bring in private organizations who should not be benefiting from this. It's like having water mafias being brought in, knowing that if people are benefiting out of a crisis unduly. Finish and clear.
We are correct. One of the biggest issues we have said, there are people who have been taking advantage of the system. As the national government, we are introducing high levels of regulation. Right now, in Parliament, we ask them to process our amendment to the Water Services Act urgently. Nobody must become a water services provider in our country, Crisalda, without an operating license. And our ministry is introducing operating licenses, and we want it to be there in law that we have submitted. It has gone to cabinet. So that you must be able to be assessed whether we are a municipality as an entity, whether we are a private sector as an entity. You have minimum requirements in terms of governance, finances, technical know-how, and the systems. And that operating license works for the utility models. And if you perform well, there's an incentive. But as the Minister of Water and Sanitation, will then have the right to withdraw the license. And there's going to be regular reviews of the capacity to still to be called an entity that can be in a position to provide water in municipalities. I know the issues of appointment of wrong contractors is one of the issues, but in Johannesburg, I was on the ground and in Tshwane.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased that the quality of contractors that are working now, fixing some of those reservoirs, they are actually of good quality. The only issue that we must sort, they must be paid on time. And the CFOs can't be paying other service providers without actually paying attention on this matter of a human rights, which is about the restoring of water.
Deputy Minister, we really do appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm sure some of our teams will join you on the ground as you continue to look at interventions to solve this crisis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on SABC. The Deputy Minister of Water and Sanitation, David Mahlobo. You'd note during the course of the coming week, the Deputy President Paul Mashatile will also be on the ground to assess what interventions have been put in place thus far. The Deputy Minister indicating that at this particular stage, you can't say for certain when the entire problem will be sorted out. While there are some areas where water has been restored or is gradually being restored, there are still some areas that are buckling under and without that water supply. All right, so thank you very much indeed to the Deputy Minister for joining us on that interview.